Okay, I want you to imagine, just for a second, sitting in a dim room. The air is heavy, and the only thing you hear is the rhythmic, deep thud of a heartbeat echoing right beneath the floorboards. You look into a mirror, but something is off. The reflection staring back at you seems to move just a fraction of a second out of sync with your own body. Now, for generations, whenever we hear the name Edgar Allan Poe, we instantly think of haunted mansions, right? Ravens, cobwebs, ghoulish frights, the whole shebang. But in this explainer, we are going to completely reframe that legacy. Because Poe, he wasn't really a writer of external monsters. He was actually an explorer of distorted reality and the terrifying depths of the human mind. The real horror in his work doesn't come from some creature hiding in the shadows. It comes from the very mind that's interpreting those shadows. So, what if the problem is not the world's, but the way your mind sees it? Really think about that for a second. What happens when the physical reality around you is perfectly stable, totally normal, but your perception of it is completely off? I mean, if you can't trust your own senses, what on earth can you trust? This chilling premise is exactly where Edgar Allan Poe begins his exploration of human terror. He literally strips away the safety net of objective reality and leaves us completely, 100% at the mercy of our own subjective interpretation. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. The clarity of madness. Breaking the stereotype of a chaotic mind. You know, when we typically think of a mind breaking down, we picture chaos, right? Total confusion, just a complete loss of reason. But in Poe's universe, madness is not some chaotic mess. Not at all. It is structured. It's this rational precision. It is an awareness that becomes so incredibly sharp, so painfully acute, that the human brain simply cannot bear it. Picture a guy sitting perfectly still in a calm room. His mind doesn't just break randomly. It follows a terrifyingly consistent internal set of rules. You aren't watching someone lose their mind. You're watching their mind operate with a hyper-focused clarity that ultimately completely destroys them. Section 2. Reality collapsing from within. A case study of internal destruction. To see exactly how this builds, let's look at Poe's absolute masterpiece, The Telltale Heart. The destruction here isn't, an earthquake crumbling the walls. It is entirely internal. Look at the exact anatomy of this mental decline. Step 1 is the insistence of sanity. The narrator desperately tries to convince us that he is perfectly rational. He just profoundly hates the old man's pale blue vulture eye. Step 2 is perfect detail of actions. He explains exactly how he stalked the man, step by step, midnight after midnight, with cold, calculated precision, absolutely believing this chilling logic proves his sanity. But then we hit step 3. Fractured perception. Driven by his own suffocating guilt, his reality starts to break, and he begins to hear the dead man's heartbeat echoing under the floorboards. The logic itself is what drives the fracture. Which brings us to Section 3, Trapped Inside the Mind, the Terror of Unreliable Interpretation. With this approach, Poe did something completely unprecedented for his time. He didn't just tell you a spooky story about someone else. He trapped you right there inside the narrator's mind. Historically, horror was external, right? Monsters, vampires, werewolves, a physical danger that you could theoretically just run away from. But Poe introduced internal horror. There are no outside threats here. The monster is the very act of being trapped inside a mind that is actively deceiving itself. And once you are inside, there is no escape. You are entirely at the mercy of their unreliable interpretation. And, let's face it, you can't outrun a threat that lives inside your own perception. When you are locked in that claustrophobic mental space, you really have to ask yourself, what is real, what is imagined, and who decides the difference? If the narrator's reality is built entirely on a fractured perception, how can we, the audience, trust anything we are being told? This profound, unsettling confusion is exactly where Poe wants us. He forces us to stop and question the very foundation of how we interpret the objective world around us. Moving to Section 4, the beauty of obsession. Elevating fear to an art form. Now, here is where Poe takes a really fascinating turn. He doesn't just treat this madness as a tool for destruction, he elevates it into a profound transformation, like an entirely new way of seeing the world. He achieves this through sharpened sensitivities: fear, guilt, memory, obsession. In a normal mind, these are just passing emotions, but for Poe's characters, they are dialed up to an unbearable intensity. The mind literally becomes a finely tuned instrument of its own suffering. Just think of the agonizing longing in The Raven, or the oppressive sensory overload in The Fall of the House of Usher. He creates an aesthetic where beauty and horror become the exact same thing, just seen from different angles. The glow of a solitary candle, the rhythm of a beating heart, a shadow on the wall. Through the lens of obsession, these completely ordinary things become intensely beautiful and profoundly terrifying all at once. Section 5. The Modern Psychological Echo, 19th Century Paranoia in the Digital Age. Now, you might be thinking this is all just, very interesting for 19th century literature, but Edgar Allan Poe was not just some distant historical figure writing by candlelit. The truth is, he was writing modern psychology long before the field of psychology even officially existed. He was mapping out the very same mental strain that defines our digital age today: anxiety, obsessive, intrusive thoughts, paranoia, a constant state of hyper-awareness. Think about the deep isolation we can feel while sitting in crowded rooms, or those late nights spent endlessly doom-scrolling through glowing phone screens, absorbing fragmented pieces of reality. That digital age mental fragmentation, that creeping anxiety and overthinking, these are the exact psychological landscapes Poe was exploring nearly 2 centuries ago. We read The Telltale Heart, and we think, oh, we're safe, we are far more stable than his unhinged narrators. But the truth is, we experience the exact same mental distortions. We just experience them in quieter forms. Every time you overthink a simple text message until it becomes a massive source of panic. Every single time your own anxiety warps a perfectly normal situation into a perceived threat, you are stepping right into the psychological trap that Poe built. The idea that we are somehow immune to this, that's just an illusion. Throughout his work, Edgar Allan Poe never really bothered to ask if the monsters in the dark were real. He knew that wasn't the scary part. Instead, he asks something far more intimate and far more dangerous. What if your mind is the monster? It's a question that completely shatters the comfort of our everyday lives. Because once you truly understand that your perception constructs your reality, reality never truly feels stable again.